achieved.
So Ben Askren goes and he competes against Jordan Burroughs in a wrestling match, exhibition. Not WWE wrestling, but wrestling, freestyle wrestling, and he gets his ass handed to him. And a lot of people are talking about how he's been exposed now. He's this new, he's the type of guy who's, was supposed to be this all-world wrestler, and here he gets destroyed. Burroughs is a monster on the mat. There's no denying that. And honestly, it is what it is. Askren went, he fought, he competed in a wrestling match, and he lost. And I don't think we should take it for any more than that. Does it change my opinion of him as a competitor as far as the mixed martial arts is concerned? Absolutely not. Does it make me wonder what Burroughs would be able to do in a mixed martial arts setting? 100%. Very curious to see what he would bring to the cage if he were to make that transition. We've seen a lot of high-level wrestlers, a lot of high-level practitioners of various disciplines come to mixed martial arts, and they might succeed at first, but they struggle to take their mixed martial arts game to the next level because the skill they rely on is not enough to get by. So, again, it was a wrestling match. He lost. Good on him for taking it. It's not maybe quite the same as, Conor going and fighting Floyd Mayweather or Anderson Silva potentially taking on Roy Jones Jr. Years ago and losing one of those fights because Gordon Askren comes from a wrestling background and was back in that discipline. But still, nonetheless, it's just a very interesting scenario, and it is what it is. Welcome back to Kamikaze Overdrive MMA Predictions. Always, I am your host, Scott Johnson, and on this episode of the show, we are breaking in the upcoming May 11th UFC 237 pay-per-view, which will feature Rose Namajunas defending her title against Brazilian title challenger Jessica Andrade, and this event is going down in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, so should be a very fantastic card. We also get to see Anderson Silva and Jose Aldo back in action at home. Could be the last time we see Anderson Silva, so definitely worth checking out. Now, I'm coming off a very solid 9-3 event at UFC Fight Night 151. I seem to have turned a corner, or at least for the time being. Looking quickly at my record, I am 26-10 over the last 3 events, and my gold plays and my silver play with Donald Cerrone have been hitting the last couple events, so we're starting to turn some cash in. I got some big units coming my way, and again, I hope to do it here. We have a nice lined card with a number of very playable lines, very interesting lines to look at. I feel really good about my main card predictions. We'll see how that plays out. My bet packs are for sale for just $15 for a full card betting breakdown in the bet shop. Check it out. Or you can subscribe for the next 6 events, and you'll save yourself about $20. So that's a couple bucks off the regular price per bet pack. So that's worth looking into. Follow me on Twitter at KO_predictions. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube. We're closing in, I think, 2,400 followers, which, hey, that's not too bad. I'll take that on my YouTube channel. And, of course, I said all my preliminary picks are available at kamikazeoverdrive.net. On that note, we have 5 pretty interesting fights to get to, so let's make that first main card prediction. Fight number 1 of the main card transpires in the UFC's lightweight division as the 15th-ranked Francisco Trinaldo, 23-6-0, takes on the surging fellow Brazilian Thiago Ferreira with a current record of 15 wins and 2 losses. Now, Francisco Trinaldo is coming off a stoppage victory over Evan Dunham in what was Evan Dunham's retirement fight. He had lost 2 of 3 in his previous 3 bouts to James Vick and Kevin Lee, with his only win in the middle against Jim Miller. Previously, he had a 7-fight winning streak, which got him right into not title contention, but certainly brought some notoriety to his name and got him a ranked spot in the UFC. For Ferreira, he has won 4 in a row. He beat Canadian Nelson in a short notice fight. And he's coming off an upset victory for Rustam Havilov, which I correctly predicted. A very good performance for Ferreira, which he'd had some issues with activity, but those 2 fights kind of got him back in the limelight, if you will. Physically, both guys 5'9", but a 4-inch reach advantage for Ferreira, and he is the younger man by 7 years. Now, as I previously mentioned, we have a Brazilian versus Brazilian matchup here in Brazil, which is a rarity. It's not uncommon, but it's certainly it's not that often that happens. And you look at Trinaldo, he is 11-3 when fighting at home in the UFC. He has actually fought a Brazilian previously when fighting on Brazilian soil. He lost to Gleison Tebow a number of years ago. For Ferreira, this might shock you, he is 0-1 fighting inside the octagon when going to Brazil, and actually that's the only time in his entire career he's fought in Brazil, his homeland, because he's fought the majority of his fights in Texas and in that region, so definitely a homecoming for him. But that would suggest me with Trinaldo with 25 total fights at home, he will have home field advantage here. He should be the crowd favorite. Now, what we have here, we have 2 Brazilians with power in their hands. Ferreira is a 3rd-degree BJJ black belt, so an elite-level grappler. Trinaldo, no slouch on the mat at a brown belt, but certainly the advantage on the mat swings to Ferreira. Trinaldo does have 12 more fights overall, so he has more experience, but he also has more mileage when you want to look at it from that perspective. Now, when you look at their wins and losses, Ferreira has 6 wins by submission, and Trinaldo has been submitted 3 times in his career. Again, he's fought some pretty tough competition, which is the reason he's lost those submissions, but nonetheless, 3 submission losses. Trinaldo, on the flip side, 8 wins by knockout, and Ferreira has a loss that came against Dustin Poirier, which stopped him with strikes, so again, vulnerabilities there. Now, when you look at Trinaldo, you say to yourself, okay, he's given up at least a single takedown in each of his last 4 fights. That's concerning against a guy like Ferreira who can do so much damage on the mat. But Thiago, he landed 2 takedowns in the Nelson fight, but he's not going to spam takedowns. He doesn't have a reputation for a guy who's going to go up and put 5 or 6 takedowns on you. In fact, he's probably never landed more than 3 in a UFC fight, if I remember my stats correctly. Trinaldo has frequently, though, he has used the ground to turn fight in his favor. But that could be an issue against Ferreira, who showed good takedown defense to Khabibulov, and when Rustam, who did take him down, Ferreira got right back up and made it really a moot point that he was, taken down momentarily. So that's huge for Thiago. Now, on the feet, and that's where I think this fight's going to transpire for a portion of it, Trinaldo had that vicious knee strike that put Evan Dunham down, just brutalizing, and we saw Ferreira in his second last fight get cracked to the body and hurt early on, and that nearly cost him the matchup. So there's certainly an avenue there for Trinaldo if he can time it. We've seen Ferreira hurt in fights before, and Trinaldo, he has that one-punch ability to get guys out of there, to do some serious damage. Now, Trinaldo's never been knocked out, but if you go back to that Yancy Medeiros fight, he hurt Medeiros, but he also got hurt in that matchup on several occasions and was in some serious trouble. And it was kind of the combination of damage and exhaustion. Ferreira overall is the more aggressive striker. I think he's going to land more here, and he has the ability to outwork Trinaldo. And Francisco's gas tank is not amazing. If you push him, he will falter. And if he doesn't falter, he still have a drop-off, and you can pull away from him. Both fighters, I think they absolutely have avenues to victory here. Ferreira appears to have more scenarios that can lead to his hand getting raised at the end of the night. Trinaldo, I think his best chance of winning this matchup is with his power, hurting Ferreira and finishing him. I think that's his best bet to win this fight. Where Ferreira, he could win with his power. He's got some good striking power. He could win with his pace, just simply outworking Trinaldo start to finish. Or he could work with the grappling. I think he's the more likely to land takedowns and do some damage, whether it be with a submission or just ground and pound and control on the mat. And a combination of all of those scenarios certainly could unfold as well for Thiago. I think this fight could be close early, but I think Ferreira starts to pull away in the second half, and my prediction is Thiago Ferreira to defeat Francisco Trinaldo by decision. The next fight in our main card is kind of an interesting one that got included on the pay-per-view, but nonetheless, we're in the UFC's welterweight division. His former title challenger, Thiago the Pitbull Alves, 28-13-0, takes on Laureano Staropoli of Argentina with a current record of 8 wins and 1 loss. Now, Alves is coming off a win over Max Griffin, where he fought at home. Many felt, including myself, he did not win that decision. I felt Alves did some good work in the second round, but I thought with a couple of knockdowns, Max clearly took round 1 and some top control. He clearly took round 3. Home cooking decision got Thiago the victory. Ultimately, the Brazilian is 2-4 over his last 6. And in the UFC, he's just 1-1 in Brazil. He's gone to his home country twice to fight, and he's only come away with the victory on 1 occasion. Now, for Staropoli, I don't know how to say it properly, he took a decision at his home in his debut, fighting at home in Argentina. It was his first fight in over a year, and of course, big rivalry, Argentina and Brazil, so certainly be very heated there. He has won 6 consecutive fights. Physically, Staropoli 3 inches taller, 1.5 inch reach advantage, and he is the younger man by 10 years. Now, this is a big step up in quality and experience of opposition for Staropoli. In his UFC debut, his opponent was 2-4-1 coming into it, so not a lot of experience. The previous guy he fought on the regional scene was 6-6, and 2 opponents prior to that, a combined record of 1-4. So he's not fighting a lot of high-level guys or even experienced guys. Those guys that have those records of like 18-14. Nothing like that. Now, for Alves, he turned pro in 2001, made his UFC debut in 2005, fought for the title against Georges St. Pierre at UFC 100 in 2009. He's 35 years old. What does he have left in the tank? Now, that's a great question. What drives a guy like this? He certainly a loss to Griffin would have been enough for him to say, I think I need to walk away. But ultimately, we have this matchup. Now, for Staropoli, he was winging wild combinations in his last fight. Hard but limited connection, very aggressive overall and pushed space. And he ultimately started doing damage. When he did start connecting on stuff, he started doing damage, but sometimes he just let loose with things that just weren't having much of a benefit. He likes to throw spinning back fists, jumping techniques, a lot of wild stuff, and he has that gas tank that seems like he can just keep engaging, and which is not what I expected, because he has a limited experience beyond the first round. His last fight was the first time he'd ever been to the third round. 5 of his 8 bouts ended in the opening round, and he had 3 others end in round 2. So not a lot of experience in longer fights, but he made it work for him in his debut. Now, Alves has the experience advantage in this fight in absolute spades, both in quality and quantity. But again, can he execute? When he fought Alexei Kuchenko, he actually landed more strikes, but he didn't sit down on his punches, didn't make them count enough, and ultimately lost the decision, even though he held his own. For Alves against Griffin, he got hurt in the first round. He was on the defensive. He seemed tentative. He actually got hurt early in that first round and late in the first round. Griffin had a very sound opening 5 minutes. He wasn't landing enough against Kuchenko. He didn't really find much success against Griffin until round 2, where he started kind of making the fight dirty and engaging him, landing hard body kicks, had him backed up to the cage. Griffin's been known to slow down a little bit too in fights, and Alves was able to capitalize. The kicks for Thiago seem to be his key to success, which I'm really not telling you anything you didn't already know. He has those nasty low kicks. I find if he can start going to the body and start catching guys in their midsection, that's when he starts to find a lot of success. And if he can back his opponents up and get their backs towards the cage, he can certainly unload and really do some damage. He has had trouble in the past with guys a little bit longer reach on him, finding that distance and getting in there and having success. At the same time, when he fought Seth Pazinski or Jordan Meehan, both fights that he won, he was able to do enough in those matchups to walk away with the victory. With Thiago Alves, can he push the pace, though? Can he mix it up? Can he put enough offense out there and do enough without getting tired, without getting hurt? And I think at this stage of the game, I don't know if that's possible. Staropoli, he's just too aggressive, and the way I look at it, he's more likely the more durable man, considering how young he is. He showed he can throw and land with consistency over 3 rounds, so once he warmed up, he showed he put up enough offense to wake that fight. I just don't trust Alves here. He needs an opponent that will stand at range with him, and I think Staropoli's just going to constantly come forward and engage and throw a variety of techniques, nothing too conventional, and Thiago is just simply going to be on his back foot for the majority of the fight and not engaging at the rate he needs to win this. Thiago, I think he needs a finish or a gift decision here. I don't think he gets either, and my prediction is Laureano Staropoli to defeat Thiago Alves by TKO. And now we get a triple header of big hitting matchups. Our next fight transpires in the UFC's featherweight division as the former champion, one of the greatest fighters of all time, the number 1 ranked contender, Jose Aldo, 28-4-0, takes on Alexander the Great Volkanovski, currently ranked 4th with a very impressive record of 19 wins and 1 defeat. Now, Aldo is looking to make another run at the title. But the back-to-back losses and definitive losses to Max makes that difficult. But again, TKO win over Jeremy Stephens, TKO win over Renato Moicano, appears to have him back on track. Now for Volkanovski, he has won 16 consecutive fights, including 6 in the UFC. He had a nice win over Darren Elkins, but an even more impressive win over Chad Mendes that has launched him into title contention and really affirmed his spot as a legit contender. Now Aldo, 1 inch taller, 1 inch reach advantage though for Volkanovski, and Volk is the younger fighter by 2 years. Now in previous breakdowns that involved these guys and some of the other guys in the featherweight division, I talked about the old guard starting to falter. And we saw Jose Aldo defeat Jeremy Stephens, but then he takes out Renato Moicano, which kind of preserved his spot, pushed them back. We saw Mendes beat Miles Jury, but then Volkanovski smashed him. So we saw Mendes take a step back. Edgar's holding on. But guys like Cub Swanson and Ricardo Lamas are starting to decline and move out of contention. And that, it happens. It's bound to happen. Now, is Volkanovski a newer version of Chad Mendes? Better reach than Mendes, more durable? Is he catching Aldo on the decline? Are all these things that lining up for the perfect storm for the Brazilian and are going to give Alex the opportunity to make a huge statement and potentially line himself up for a not too distant future title shot? Quite possibly. It's worth noting as well, Aldo 4-1 in Brazil when fighting in the UFC. His only title fight loss to Max Holloway. For Volk, he has back-to-back fights in the United States. Normally he fights in the Australia-New Zealand region, so this will be his first trip to Brazil, which can be a lot for a fighter. Now, ultimately, and I talk about this all the time, the key to beating Aldo has been to push him hard. That secretariat style, I'm going to force you to fight at a pace that you are not comfortable with, and when you start to falter, I'm going to keep pouring it on, and I'm going to pull away, and that's what Max Holloway did successfully. Tony Ferguson, another guy who likes to do this. Max Holloway did this exceptionally well and got him out of there, but it did take him to the end of the 3rd round in both matchups to ultimately accomplish his goal. Now, Volk, he isn't known for his volume game. He has power. He'll step into the pocket and throw with big pop behind his punches, but he's not going to come forward with these constant barrages that are consistent. He'll engage and then separate, and engage and then separate. And if you go back to the Mendes fight, he wasn't destroying Mendes start to finish by any stretch of the imagination. In fact, Mendes was winning the majority of the exchanges up until the finish. Mendes dropped him in the second round and put Volkanovski on the defensive. We did see then Mendes eventually get to the mat, but he overextended himself on the floor. When Volk recovered, got up, he put Chad down with a nice combination, including going to the body. Ultimately, he had better cardio. He was more durable. It allowed him to win that matchup. Aldo does his best work when he fights at his range. He slides in and out, lands, and limits the damage coming back his way. Holloway kept engaging, attacking him, hurting him, tiring him out. Stevens didn't have the variety to do it and got finished as a result. And we see where does Volkanovski fit? I think he fits somewhere in between. Aldo fought a very measured pace against Renato Moicano until he hurt him. And he didn't expose himself, but then once he hurt him, he opened up and he went for the finish. And that's a very effective way to do things. Fight at a pace where you're winning the fight, but not extending, not exposing yourself to damage. Volkanovski at times has relied on his wrestling. In a number of his fights, he's gone to the takedown game, but all his takedown defense is still solid. That's going to remove one of Alex's weapons. He didn't have it against Mendes. He won't have it here. Over 3 rounds, Volkanovski ultimately has 2 options to win this matchup. Knock Aldo the fuck out, or push a pace he can't match, leading to a decision or a KO through exhaustion. I don't see Volkanovski pushing a pace on the Max Holloway level. I don't see him pushing a pace on the Frankie Edgar level either. And, against a stunted striker like Mendes, who has power but doesn't have the reach and doesn't have the variety, Volkanovski was still picking his spots and timing, when to get in and when to get out. Although he has more weapons in this fight. Knees, kicks, body and head punches. I could see him having a slight speed advantage as well. I think Volkanovski, he'll get the second best of the majority of the exchanges unless he lands something big like one of those big hooks. I think he's going to have a performance maybe a little bit better than what Frankie Edgar was able to put together against Aldo, but just not enough. He's going to land, but it's just not going to be enough. Aldo's going to benefit from fighting at home. He's going to land more strikes here. He's going to be jacked up. I think if it's a close fight, he still gets the nod. And my prediction is Jose Aldo to defeat Alexander Volkanovski by decision. In the co-main event of the evening, we're in the UFC's middleweight division as former middleweight champion, the 14th ranked fighter in the division, Anderson the Spider Silva, 34 wins, 9 losses, and 1 no contest, takes on the Killer Gorilla Jared Cannonier, ranked 10th in the division, with a record of 11 wins and 4 defeats. Now, Silva most likely looking to retire either after this fight or in the not-too-distant future. You really don't know with Anderson, but he is almost at the end of his career. He has just 1 win in his last 7, which includes that no contest against Nick Diaz, and he had that very questionable decision victory over Derek Brunson. Now, Cannonier is coming off a very successful middleweight debut where he was able to defeat David Branch by round 2 TKO. He had lost back-to-back bouts at light heavyweight and had just 1 win in his previous 4 fights. Now, this is the ever-shrinking Killer Gorilla. It's almost like Rampage, the movie, in reverse. We saw him at heavyweight, then down to light heavyweight, and down to middleweight, and he looks like a monster at middleweight. He was very undersized the other divisions. He looks like a physical monster here. Silva, 3 inches taller. They have the same 77-inch reach, but Cannonier is the younger man by 9 years. Now, for Anderson Silva, he had won 17 fights in a row, and then 1 win in his last 7. 17 fights in 6 years, and then just 7 in his last 6 years. So you see that 2 ends of the spectrum for his career. Has he held on too long? Probably. It's probably got to the point where he should have walked away at some point before and saved a bit of that legacy. But hey, if he wins this matchup, it's a good time to go as well. Does he have one last big dance left in him? He held his own against Adesanya, who's now the interim champion. Maybe won a round in that fight, but he clearly lost the matchup overall. Statistically, it was a stylistically, it was a solid fight for him. Didn't have to worry about takedowns. It was almost like a hard sparring contest. Absolutely, the knockout was potential, but it was one of those fights these guys wanted to show their skills, and that's what we got to see. For Cannonier, when you look at his resume, he's lost 2 styles of fights. Fights where it was takedown heavy, or he got knocked out. Jan Blachowicz took him down 4 times. Glover Teixeira 3 times. Branch won the first round with takedowns. And even when you go back to Ion Cutelaba, he took him down 6 times in the first half of that fight and won the first half of the fight and controlled the majority of the exchanges. And then when you go, Dominic Reyes knocked him out. So did Sean Jordan way back in the day at heavyweight. Guys with big punching power. Of the 2 scenarios, Anderson Silva is more likely to win by knockout than by takedown-based decision. Again, I'm not telling you anything you don't already know, so just, humor me. Cannonier, he beat David Branch because David Branch slowed down. He beat Ion Cutelaba because Cutelaba slowed down. Over Cyril Asker and I think, I can't remember the Rorik. I can't remember, it was a last-second opponent change. not obviously great UFC level competition. Now, what Cannonier does have, he has big power. There's no denying that. He thrives when he can use it to intimidate opponents, and if he can make that power translate at middleweight effectively, it's going to be a lot of problems for guys. He does his best work when he's walking forward, landing punches, and backing his opposition up. Can he do that to Anderson Silva? Is it in his best interest to do that to Anderson Silva? Silva ultimately plays those mind games, makes it very difficult for you to find your range and feel comfortable, but he does his best work when he's counter-striking. When his opponent's coming forward, throwing power, Anderson uses his speed and timing to avoid and counter. Is he quick enough to do that? Again, I don't know. Does he look... He looked good against a striker in Adesanya. Cannonier's not as diverse as Israel, but potentially is more thump when he punches, and that's something to worry about here as well. We also have to consider the Brazil factor here. Cannonier's going into hostile territory. That can be difficult. Jared is 1-2 overall when fighting outside of the United States. Could be fighting in a hot arena, which for a guy as heavily muscled as he is, that could be a difficult factor as well. We've also seen issues where foreign fighters go down to Brazil and issues arise when they're trying to make their weight cuts. They can't find meals that work for them. The prepared meals they have aren't enough, or they've lost them, whatever. The water situation isn't ideal. And again, all issues that we can't really account for and we can't count on, but possibly could play a role here. As I said, this could be Anderson Silva's retirement fight. I think that plays a big factor. Look for him here to put together another special performance. He's going to rise to the occasion, and if you don't think the UFC looked up and down the middleweight division, said what would be a legitimate opponent, we're not going to get frowned upon for putting him in there, but he has a good chance to win, and they look at Jared Cannonier and say, yeah, he's dangerous, but ultimately Anderson can beat him. Cannonier has power to finish this fight with one punch. Silva's chin is still good, not perfect, and he could be put down. Cannonier, I think, is going to spend the first round trying to track Silva down. It's going to be that bull and matador situation that will tire him out. He'll take some damage along the way. Look for Anderson to get his timing down, start to open up late in round 1, early start of round 2. Anderson will back Cannonier up. He's going to hurt him. He's going to overwhelm him. And my prediction is Anderson Silva to defeat Jared Cannonier by TKO. And finally, we move to the main event of the evening. And if you're not excited for this matchup, if you're one of these uber masculine guys who's like, fuck it, I'm done after the co-main event because it's women in the main event, you aren't a mixed martial arts fan. I'm sorry, you're just not. Because this fight stands to be fantastic. We are in the UFC women's strawweight division as the champion, Thug Rose Namajunas, with a record of 9 wins and 3 losses, takes on the 19-6 former title challenger and number 1 ranked fighter in the division, Jessica Andrade. Now, Rose is returning after a 13-month layoff. She has won 3 in a row, including winning and defending her title against the former champion, one of the best pound-for-pound fighters in the world, Joanna Jędrzejczyk. For Andrade, she has won 3 in a row. She is 6-1 since moving to Strikeforce. Her only loss against the aforementioned Joanna, former champion. And that fight came by decision. Now, physically, Rose 4 inches taller, so a 3-inch reach advantage, and she is the younger fighter by a year. But as we always say with Andrade, she fought 2 weight classes above her at bantamweight, so she has been dealing with reach and height disadvantages for the majority of her career. That should not faze her. Now, when you look at the resume on these 2 girls and who they fought and who they defeated, Andrade beat Jessica Penn, beat JoJo Calderwood, beat former Invicta champion Angela Hill, beat Tisha Torres, beat Karolina Kowalkiewicz, and absolutely smashed Claudia Gadelha in a fight I correctly predicted. Wow, that's an impressive run. Her only loss, as I said, to Joanna Jędrzejczyk. For Rose, she beat Hill, she beat Paige Van Zandt when Paige was considered a little bit more than she was. Fight I got right. Tisha Torres she beat Michelle Waterson, who's come a long way here recently. And she beat Jędrzejczyk twice. That's impressive. Her only loss, the aforementioned Karolina Kowalkiewicz. So, based on MMA math, it's a fucking mess. Rose beat Joanna twice, and Andrade lost to her, but Andrade absolutely destroyed Kowalkiewicz, and Rose lost to her, so none of that makes any sense. Ultimately, styles make fights, and you look back to the women's bantamweight division with Ronda Rousey beating Miesha Tate twice, and then Holm beating Rousey, but then Tate beating Holm. It's just styles make fights, and that's what we're looking at here. Now, Rose is making her first non-Jędrzejczyk title defense. She is moving past that chapter in her career, but she's going to Brazil, facing a Brazilian. That's a hell of a thing to do for a champion. It's a huge test. And it's also, keep in mind, this is the first time Rose has been in a headliner. Her previous fights have all been co-main events. Andrade's never been a headliner either, but it's something different when you're a champion fighting on the road in the main event. That's a huge scenario. Now that I think it wasn't her fight with Paige Van Zandt a headliner. As far as championship fights, she's never been a championship fighter. I'm quickly looking back. And yeah, sorry, Namajunas versus Van Zandt was, back in 2015, was a headliner. But again, title is on the line here. Pardon me. Now, It's also worth noting Rose is returning from a major spinal injury. She suffered working with the Shevchenko sisters, training with them. How does that impact her here? She's a very, and now as far as it's a question we can't really determine. She's not going to release information. She's struggling. If she's fine, it's just something we know exists and could be a factor. Now, when you look at Rose, what she does well, she's an incredibly opportunistic grappler. She capitalizes on her opponent's mistakes, and if she gets your back, she's lethal. 4 of her 5 submission wins have come by rear naked choke. She has improved her wrestling as well. In recent outings, she took Paige Van Zandt down 8 times, of course, a number of years ago. She took Kovacevic down twice. She landed 1 of 2 takedowns in the second Jacek fight, which was enough to get her decision. I thought she lost that matchup, just by the way. Andrade comes into this. She has 2 losses by submission. Both came at bantamweight. So she is vulnerable if Rose gets her in a position. Anybody that Rose gets in a good position against is vulnerable being submitted. But Andrade, 75% takedown defense. Strawweight opponents have attempted 15 takedowns on her and landed 2. Claudia Gadelha, who is a monster in her own right on the floor, 0-4-7. And I love that fight. I had Andrade from start to finish, and she was an underdog, and she absolutely crushed her. Now, Andrade, when she fought other fighters with good takedown defense, she's had success. She took down Tisha Torres 10 times. She took down Joanna Jacek twice. She took down Jojo Calderwood and submitted her. She took down Gadelha on 4 occasions and dominated her on the mat. So you could look at her and say she could go to the floor here and have success. But, she's got nasty ground and pound. She has 7 wins by submission, 6 by that really tight guillotine. You can't shoot a lazy takedown on this girl or she will submit you. You will be in trouble. But again, Rose is a dangerous fighter in the match. She could gain that dominant position, get a submission, or hold her back and grind it around and really wear her down. Conversely, Andrade is that monster on the floor. If she can dominate Gadelha on the ground, I would expect she should be able to outmuscle Namajunas and get some good position and do some damage. Still needs to be careful, but I would favor Andrade slightly with the ground and pound on the mat. Now, Rose has improved her striking. We saw her drop Joanna with a right hand and then a left hook to put her down in the first fight. She steps in and throws in flurries. But again, she only has 1 win by knockout. She's not a volume striker. She landed 105 significant strikes against Joanna in the second matchup. Her second best performance was 70 significant strikes in her loss to Kovacevic. Both fights, she actually got outlanded, including 145 against Joanna. So in order for her to land offense, she has to give it up. That's her style. Rose, she likes to stay on the outside. She'll work a left jab, but then she steps in and throws with flurries, lands with volume, but she opens herself up to getting hit, and her opponents are able to capitalize on it. And again, let's not overblow the Joanna Jacek knockout. Gadelha hurt her. We saw Kovacevic also do some damage against her. It seemed like it was something that was inevitable, and Rose was the one to cash in. Now, for Andrade, she has brutal power. She throws in flurries as well, those big hooks. She was blasting Carolina with those massive combinations. I'm really picking on Carolina in this prediction. Right hook landed several times, which did a lot of the damage. She threw a left jab, and that massive right hook that KO'd, not TKO, knocked the fuck out Carolina Kovacevic. It is rare to see that brutal of a one-punch knockout in a women's fight, but we saw it. Now, Carolina Kovacevic could not back her up. She had to think, every time she wanted to go offensive, she had to think defensively first. Before she could step in and engage, she was like, okay, I have to be ready for what's coming back my way. Because every time she engaged, we saw Jessica fire something back. When KK committed, she was stepping into the pocket. Andrade met her with volume every time very effectively, and that's something we're going to see in this fight. Andrade, she is lethal with volume. But again, she also has that one-punch knockout power, 6 wins by knockout. She has more options to win this fight than Namajunas, and I would say she's more durable overall. The one area we did see was Joanna Jacek was able to use her range striking to keep Jessica on the outside, pick her apart, movement, precision striking to beat Andrade. Perfect 25 minutes. Well-executed fight. I don't know if Rose can do that. Rose's style isn't meant to work like that. Rose, to win this matchup, she needs to be opportunistic. Needs a submission. She's not going to be able to outwork her opponent on the feet, and she might be able to slow Andrade down, but even then she could be behind. Andrade, I think she'll have the volume advantage, and she'll also have the impact advantage. She's going to keep it standing. She's going to keep engaging. She's going to hurt Rose. Her combinations are going to do more damage than when Thug steps in and lands hers, and every time Rose steps in, you're going to see Jessica fire back and make her start to second-guess her willingness to engage. And ultimately, I think Jessica just gets the better of it, and unless she makes a mistake and gets caught, this is her fight to win, fighting at home. My prediction is Jessica Andrade to defeat Rose Namajunas by TKO. So those are my 5 main card predictions for UFC 237. It's against pay-per-view in Brazil. Again, the last one was lengthy, but again, fantastic fight. Super awesome fight. Hopefully I didn't offend anybody by saying you're not a fan, but again, this is a massive matchup, and if you're going to give women's MMA an opportunity, and this is a fight you need to check out, 100%, I endorse it fully. You will not be disappointed. As always, the preliminary predictions will be available at kamikazeoverdrive.net. You can follow me on Twitter at KO_predictions. Check me out on YouTube. You can subscribe there. The bet packs will be for sale, $15. We're starting to find our stride. We've cashed in the last 2 shows. I'm seeing some good lines here that I really look forward to working with and seeing what I come up with. If you want to subscribe, you'll save yourself about $20, I think it is right now, for the next couple of weeks, or next couple of events over the next 2 months. So certainly look into that. And hey, we've got some fun fights coming up. I'm very energized for this card. Very much looking forward to it. And on that note, I gotta get out of here. Talk to you soon, people. Take care.